Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the John Campea Show here on this fine Tuesday. As always, I am humbled and privileged that you guys would consider making this a part of your day. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea, and this is the show where I like to talk about all my favorite things in the world, particularly movies and television and stuff like that. And here's how today's show is going to go. I got a couple of items in the world of movie news that I found interesting. I'm going to talk about those up top. And then I'm going to take the topics and questions that you guys have sent in to me. How do you get a topic or a question on the John Campea Show? It's simple. Simply email me anytime at John@the John Campea Show. And this is important, guys. Make sure you put the word topic in the subject line. Put the word topic in the subject line, because if you don't have that in there, I'm not going to know. Now, here's the other important thing, guys. When you send in your emails, make sure you keep your emails to 90 words or less. Otherwise, it's just too long for me to read. And even if I wanted to read them, I couldn't use them on the show because they're physically too big to fit onto the screen. So that's how you get a topic or question. Now, once I get through those, I'm going to save a few minutes near the end of the show to take live questions from you guys who are watching live right now. How will you get a question on live? It's simple. Just tweet to me at John Campea. That's how you're going to send live questions to me, is on Twitter. And I'll get to those, like I said, at or near the end of the show. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get started here with topic number one. And the first topic today is this. One video game movie that a lot of people have been asking for and thought had some potential to be cute and could be a favorite with the audience is Sonic the Hedgehog. And there has been talk about a Sonic the Hedgehog movie for years. It's been over at Sony, and Sony's been mulling it over and mulling it over. But I guess Sony could just never find the right way to put that one together, or didn't think it could actually work well enough for it to be profitable. So they let it go. And now Sonic, it was announced yesterday, has found a new home at Paramount. So now Paramount Studios, it's odd. You'd think if there's going to be a Sonic the Hedgehog movie, you would just naturally assume that would probably be done by Sony. But apparently now, Sonic is now the property of Paramount, and Paramount does plan on turning Sonic into what we expected, a hybrid of a live action and CG movie, much like Jungle Book probably more like the other way around. I got a feeling it's going to be a live action movie with just those characters from the Sonic game will be CG, including Sonic himself. Now, this is interesting because video game movies, obviously, I mean, we've talked about this all the time. Video game movies struggle. It's tough for them to get a good video game movie up and going. But Sonic the Hedgehog is also a very, very kid-friendly title. So I think Paramount is rolling the dice here a little bit and betting on the fact that it's a popular video game series, plus the fact that it's a very kid-friendly type of title, might be enough to generate enough interest in the movie to make it worth their while. And you know what? I think they're right. Now, we still don't know whether or not Sonic is going to be a great movie, whether it's going to be a horrible movie, whatever. We're going to have to see how the marketing all goes. But I think on black and white paper, I think their logic is sound. The idea that it's a popular video game title, plus the fact that it's kid-friendly, you've got a lot of things going in your favor. This was a move that I think was good for Paramount to take, and heaven knows Paramount needs a hit. Paramount needs a hit badly. Then again, so does Sony. I'm not really sure why Sony didn't move ahead with it. Maybe they just see too many potential pitfalls, in which case maybe they're right. Maybe it's not worth rolling the dice on. Paramount thinks it is. They're going to take a shot at it, and we'll see how it all goes. All right, let's move on to the next topic here, and that's this. Now, ever since Split came out, the M. Night Shyamalan movie Split, we all know, especially if you've seen the movie, that a sequel is coming called Glass. Glass is, of course, a sequel to both Split and Unbreakable. It's going to have Bruce Willis. It's going to have James McAvoy. It's going to have Samuel L. Jackson. They're all in there. Of course, Samuel L. Jackson plays Mr. Glass. The sequel is no longer just theory, ladies and gentlemen. It's filming. They've started filming the movie. It is now in front of cameras. It is shooting in Philadelphia as we speak. We are in the beginning stages, possibly, of the Shyamalan. You know, if we had the McConaissance, we might be in the middle of the Shyamalan, because that one movie, what was that called, the little horror movie? I think it was called The Visit. That little horror movie, that was a nice, pleasant little surprise of a horror movie. Like, not one of the top 10 movies of the year or anything like that. But it was a pleasant movie. I enjoyed it. And I think a lot of people did. It's like, okay, good for you, M. Night. Like, you got a win under your belt. Then came Split. And the vast majority of the audiences really enjoyed Split. And then, of course, that killer ending, which is, of course, what the M. Night Shyamalan is known for doing, those big twist endings. But it's a big twist ending with a purpose, and everybody got all excited. And now we've got Glass coming. I, for one, am very curious to see what he does. Under normal circumstances, I would say that an Unbreakable sequel is too little too late. I mean, it's too far gone. It's too late for an Unbreakable sequel. But with what they did with Split, setting that up, I think there was any way to do an Unbreakable sequel. That was the way to do it. We're all set up now. We'll see how prominent of a role, James McAvoy plays. I think like his creature is going to be the central figure of it. Then you've got Glass is kind of pulling the strings behind the scenes, and Bruce Willis is on the hunt. We'll see how it all goes. But I know I, for one, am very excited about this movie. It's been a long time since I've been excited for an M. Night movie. Let's see if the Shamhammer can actually make a triumphant return. All right, guys, now I'm going to move on to the main part of the show, which is taking your topics and questions that you guys send in to me. One more time, if you guys want to get a topic or a question on the John Campea Show, email me at john@thejohncampeashow.com and put the word topic in the subject line. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get on to the first question of the day. And the first question today comes to us from Dan Irwin, who writes, "Hey, John, and greetings from Ireland." Well, thank you so much. I love my viewers in Ireland. Love the show and listen to it every day. My question is, what is happening with the Pinocchio movie with Robert Downey Jr.? When can we expect that to be released, or has it been canceled? Thanks, and keep up the great work. Well, thanks a lot for the question, Dan. And yeah, for a lot of people have already forgotten about this. In case you didn't know, a couple of years ago, they made the announcement that Robert Downey Jr. was going to star in a live-action Pinocchio movie. I assume he was going to play Geppetto. Anyway, so that got announced. Then a little while after that, Ron Howard got attached as the director. And I believe Brian Fuller, the guy behind Hannibal, and he was one of the creators of the new Star Trek Discovery. Brian Fuller, I believe, wrote the initial script for it as well. Anyway, that's going back to, I think, 2014, 2015, in that era there somewhere. So it's been a while. Now, obviously, since then, Robert Downey Jr. has kept himself busy with Spider-Man and all things MCU. Ron Howard right now is working on the Han Solo movie. Brian Fuller, he was working on Star Trek Discovery and then unceremoniously left. So I don't know what Brian Fuller's up to right now. I'll tell you what he's not doing. He's not making another season of Hannibal, which disappoints a lot of people. So what's the status of it? As far as I know, it's dead. As far as I know. Now, I only base that on the fact that there has been, in years, there's been absolutely no mention of this project, no further attachments announced that I've heard of, that Ron Howard has, if you look on Ron Howard's IMDb, it's not just Han Solo, he's got other projects lined up too right now. Ryan Gosling, Robert Downey Jr., his dance card is pretty full right now. So as far as I know, it's dead. Maybe they just decided to take the Pinocchio project, put it on the shelf and say, you know what? Robert Downey Jr. can play Geppetto anytime between now and the next 25 years. I mean, who cares if Robert Downey Jr. ages another 20 years? He's supposed to be Geppetto, so we can do it then. So maybe they've just put it on the shelf. But as far as I know, the project has stalled, and we're not going to see the Pinocchio movie anytime soon. But listen, if you guys have heard any different, do me a favor, jump into the comments section and leave a link or leave what you've heard. I'd be curious to know, because as far as I know, no bueno on Pinocchio at this point. All right, let's move on now to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Lavarski 2 Icy, who writes, "Hey, John, I'm a big fan of your show. Thank you so much. All the way from Boogie Down Bronx. My question is a simple one, really. What are your Rotten Tomatoes score predictions for Thor 3, Justice League, and The Last Jedi? Thank you, and have a blessed day." Well, thanks a lot. And that's the big question right now, right? We've got the big three, at least in the geek circles. We've got the big three movies coming out still this year. We got Thor Ragnarok, we've got Star Wars The Last Jedi, and we got Justice League. Now, I've already expressed how I think the box office is going to shake out. Star Wars will make the most money, Justice League will make the next, and Thor will make the next. But predicting how will Rotten Tomatoes go? Now, obviously, this is the type of prediction that is the most guesswork. Because at least with box office, You have past data that you can draw on to try to formulate some, educated guesses, right? So there's at least a little bit of basis there. For trying to guess a Rotten Tomatoes score, it's impossible. Like, past movies' performance means nothing, all that kind of stuff. So you're really just taking a loopy, wild guess. Okay. So if I'm going to take a loopy, wild guess about how Thor Ragnarok, Justice League, and Star Wars The Last Jedi will go. Okay. So I've already said I believe Justice League will be a good movie. I think, combining the visual storytelling talents of Zack Snyder with the narrative and dialogue and character talents of Joss Whedon, I think we're in for a good film. So I'm excited about that. So I think it will be the second positively reviewed DCEU movie. Wonder Woman, remember, I predicted Wonder Woman would be the first DCEU movie over 75%. Obviously, it cracked that. I believe Justice League will be the next movie to crack 75%. Yes, I'm going as high as 75%. So, how do I see this shaking out? All right. I believe that Star Wars The Last Jedi will be in the 90s. Whether it's 91 or 98, I don't know, but I'm going to predict that Star Wars The Last Jedi will be in the 90s. I'm hearing nothing but glowing things about it. Everybody at Disney is completely thrilled with the movie at this point. So, and considering that, the critics and the audiences have really enjoyed the previous Star Wars films, I'm predicting 90+% for Star Wars The Last Jedi. For Justice League, I'm going to go between 75 and 79%. I believe Justice League will get into the 70s. I don't know that it'll get much higher than that. I mean, obviously there's been shakeup and whatever. And while the shakeup, I think, will help it in some ways, I also think it's going to be a little bit noticeable that there's some gear changing going on in the movie between a changing of directors. So I believe that's also going to hold it back a little bit. But I believe Justice League will crack into that top 75%. So I believe it's going to come in 75 to 79%. Once again, only becoming the second DCU movie to crack that number. So I'm thinking good things for Justice League. Thor Ragnarok. Here's the thing. It looks fantastic. Early buzz is very good. The one thing that I think is going to prevent Thor Ragnarok from hitting 90% is I can't help but wonder, looking at the trailers for it, if Thor Ragnarok might be a little bit too trippy for some people, for some audience members, and thus some critics. I think it might be just a little bit too far out there, psychedelic trippy. If that's the case, I still think it's going to be received very well. I'm going to go 80 to 85%. I don't know it'll go much higher than that, but I'm going to go 80 to 85%. So good news for those of us who like the geek-centric movies. I think all of the big three still to come out are going to score very well with the critics. I think Justice League, Thor, and Star Wars will all score well. I see Justice League coming in between 75 and 80, 75 and 79%. I see Thor Ragnarok coming between 80 and 85%. And I see Star Wars The Last Jedi coming into the 90s. But clearly now, this opens up the floodgates. What do you guys think? Jump into the comment section. Start putting down some numerical values. How do you think Star Wars The Last Jedi is going to do? How do you think Justice League is going to do on Rotten Tomatoes? How do you think Thor Ragnarok is going to do with the critics? Jump in there, put down a numerical value. I'd be very curious to see. I already see a bunch of you guys in the live chat board throwing out a lot of numbers, which is great. I want to see what you guys think these movies are going to do. The most important thing though here is this, is I do think they're all going to be good. And I think we're all going to have a really good time at the movie theater for these last couple of months as we head into the end of the 2017 calendar year. I think we're going to have some great movies to really enjoy, some big blockbuster popcorn fun movies. Like I said, I think all three of them are going to knock it. I really do. I think all three of them are going to do good. And I think we're all going to be very, very happy movie fans. Fingers crossed. I'm going to be crushed if any of these three aren't good. If Justice League doesn't end up being good, if Thor Ragnarok doesn't end up being good, oh, heaven help me. If Star Wars The Last Jedi doesn't end up being good, I'm probably, I'm going to have to take up drinking. Anyway, so heaven help us if it's not. But I think we are in, as movie fans, for a really good couple of months, especially with these three big ones coming. All right, let's move on to the final question of the day before I move on to your live Twitter questions. And the final question today comes to us from one of my Patreon supporters, Kevin. And Kevin writes, 2 skeptically anticipated shows aired in the last week, Star Trek Discovery and The Inhumans. While the new Star Trek show is surprisingly good with excellent production values, The Inhumans was god-awful and looked cheaply made. Do you think the problems with the new Marvel show should ultimately be blamed on Marvel chairman Ike Perlmutter, who is infamous for being tight with a penny? Thanks a lot for the question. Well, let's see. First of all, let's talk about Star Trek Discovery for a second. If those of you guys who saw my review the other day, you remember I've been poo-pooing on this project. I really have. I still don't think it's a good idea that they're putting it on CBS All Access. But that aside, I have not been very optimistic about this show at all. And I saw the first 2 episodes, and look, I straight up loved them. I loved the first 2 episodes. And you know what? I just watched episode 3. And I thought episode 3 was great. We got Jason Isaacs in there now. Doug Jones is awesome in the show. I love his character. I really like this show. This show is really good. Now, I know there are some people out there who don't particularly like hardcore Trekkies who have a problem with it. I don't care. Like, you can say all you want that I don't like it because it's not what it should be. I don't care what... I didn't go into Star Trek Discovery with any preconceived prejudices about what it should be. I just watched it and said, okay, I'm going to watch you. Be good. If you're good, I'll say you're good. If you're not good, it's not good. I didn't go into Star Trek Discovery with any preconceived prejudices about what the show's supposed to be. I just wanted to see a good show. And guess what? They made a damn good show. And I'm not going to debate anybody whether or not the show's not what it's supposed to be. Well, that's okay. Maybe you're right. Maybe the show isn't what it's supposed to be, according to you and your prejudices. All I know is that when I watched the show with no existing prejudices, and I was skeptical about this show, believe you me, I was skeptical about this show, I was impressed. I was really impressed. Great characters, great storytelling, high production value. I think they're off to a great start. So, and look, if you don't agree, that's totally fine. That's the great thing about movies and TV. It's all subjective. We can all see different things. From my point of view, and I got no problem with people who don't like the show. That's totally fine. I just have a problem with people who say they don't like the show on the basis of it's not what it's supposed to be. That's what I have a problem with. If you just don't like the show because you watched it and you didn't think it did it for you, that's great. No problem with that. That's awesome. I have a problem with people who outwardly admit this show is not what it's supposed to be, which means I already have it in my head what Star Trek is supposed to be. And if you don't do what I have in my head, you did it wrong. Well, okay, you're allowed to have that opinion. I guess we all do it. I guess I do it with some other properties. You probably do it with some properties too. It's part of the human condition, I guess. Anyway, so let's talk about Inhumans for a second. Humans sucks. Inhumans suck. I believe worse than Iron Fist. It is the worst thing that Marvel has ever produced. You have to go all the way back to that Corman Fantastic Four, like going back to the 80s, until you find something else that Marvel did was as equally as bad. So the question becomes, is it Ike Perlmutter's fault because he was cheap? He didn't allow them to do a lot of... Well, I mean, Ike didn't write the script. Ike didn't direct it. But Ike is responsible for doling out the budgets. But look, at the bottom line is this. Did Inhumans look cheap? Yes. But guess what? If it was a good story, and if it had good dialogue, and you set up good characters, and you set them up in a good way, the cheap production value wouldn't have been that big of a problem. It still would have been noticeable, yes. But ultimately, it wouldn't have been that big of a problem. And I guarantee you this. They put more money into Inhumans than they put into Daredevil. They put more money into Inhumans than they put into Jessica Jones. They basically spend bus fare in terms of network television types of budgets. They basically put bus fare into those Netflix shows. I think they put a bunch more into Defenders, but you watch Daredevil, watch Jessica Jones, watch Luke Cage. That is low production costs, really low. They just make the best with what they got. So if they can do that, then no, I do not think that the problem... Is it a problem? Maybe. But the problem with Inhumans is the budget? Nope. You could have thrown $50 million on that. It still would have been the same terrible story. You could have given them an extra $100 million. Still would have been the same crappy dialogue. You could have given them $250 million. It still would have been characters I do not care about at all, except for the lead. I liked Black Bolt. Black Bolt was really good. But other than that, everything else was terrible. Everything else was terrible. And it doesn't matter how big of a check you write at it, that wouldn't have changed all the things that were the main problems. Cheap looking production value was a problem, but it wasn't the defining problem. It's not the thing that took Inhumans from being a great show to being a piss poor show. And Inhumans is a piss poor show. In my opinion, maybe you saw it and you liked it. Again, that's awesome if you did. I'm glad somebody's enjoying it. I thought it was total garbage. And I am not interested in investing or wasting any more of my time watching any more of it. I'm sold that it's a terrible show. But honestly, look, I've had my critiques and criticisms of Ike Perlmutter in the past, for sure. But honestly, I don't think you can say that the problem with Inhumans is Ike Perlmutter. No, it's much more systemic than that. It's really not Ike Perlmutter sitting there on his own, not writing the script, not directing it, all that kind of crap. The problem isn't him. All right, let's move on now to some live Twitter questions. I know a bunch of you guys are watching live. Got hundreds of you guys in the chat board. So I'm going to go over to my Twitter thing right now. Once again, if you want to get a question on, you simply go tweet to me at John Campea. I'm going to pull out some live Twitter questions right now. So let's see what we got. And we're going to start with the first question. And our first question today is R. Drago66 writes, aside from Captain Phasma, what does episode 8 need to do to be better than episode 7? Anything. Like, you can't say, what's the one thing? I don't know, because I don't know what the movie's about. So I can't say it needs to do this to be better. No, let's just watch the movie. Like, after we watch the movie, we can say what things it should have done better in that movie. But until we see the movie, we won't know what the things are that they need to improve upon. So really, that's not really a question that I can answer. Next question. You know what? That's enough with R. Drago. I've taken a bunch of questions from R. Drago the last couple of days. Let's see. Bob05232357 writes, did you enjoy the new episode of Lucifer season 3? Dude, I'm going to do a video today or tomorrow. I am absolutely doing a video today or tomorrow on, and I'm going to call it like why you must watch Lucifer. It is one of my favorite shows on TV right now. I have loved this show from episode 1, and I didn't even start watching it till it was already on for a few weeks because I thought it looked kind of dumb. This show is great. And the guy, I think the lead actor's name is Tom Ellis. And Tom Ellis plays Lucifer. And Lucifer is easily my single favorite character on television right now, is Lucifer. And his brother, Amedadil, is amazing. And Mazikeen, his like demon kind of bodyguard frenemy, is amazing. The one kind of weak thing in the show, and she's getting better, but is the female lead of the show who plays the detective. I'm still not completely on board with her, but she's growing on me. She's getting better. It only took 3 seasons. But seriously, guys, if you're not watching Lucifer, you really start from the beginning. You will love it. It's funny. It's really funny. Great mythology based on a comic series of the same name. But I highly, highly recommend you check out Lucifer because it is amazing. All right. And I did love episode 1 of season 3. I thought it was great. Okay, let's move on to the next one. The next one is The House Chill, who writes, Luke Skywalker versus Dumbledore. Easy, Luke Skywalker. Lightsaber beats everything. Lightsaber beats Hulk. I remember one of the debates I had when I was on movie fights was, who wins, Hulk or, a Jedi? And it's like, well, the thing is, Hulk is bulletproof and missile-proof and everything. Lightsaber beats everything. So lightsaber cuts through Hulk, no problem. So yes, I believe Luke Skywalker absolutely beats Dumbledore. Let's see. Let's try this next one. This next one comes from Hen1996. Henderson writes, do you think we will ever see a reboot of Dick Tracy? Actually, no, I don't. I think it's a little too far removed. Now, it's great that you had that original, but it was made by actors who they themselves grew up reading Dick Tracy. And that's great. Like Warren Beatty, he loved Dick Tracy growing up. But now we're in an age where nobody knows who Dick Tracy is. The current audience doesn't know who Dick Tracy is. There's no point in doing a modern telling of Dick Tracy. For Dick Tracy to be Dick Tracy, you'd have to set it in his own era. And honestly, I don't think anybody's really all that interested in it. So do I think they'll do a Dick Tracy reboot? No, I do not. All right, let's go on to the next one. Elijah A. writes, should Kevin Conroy be the Stan Lee of the DCEU? The guy who does the voice of Batman? No. Just my opinion. No disrespect to the work he does as that, but Kevin Conroy is not Stan Lee. I hope I'm thinking of the right guy. He's not a Stan Lee. He's a guy who did a voice. He didn't even write the script. He didn't write the dialogue. He didn't create the characters. He didn't do anything. Let's not compare a voice actor who goes in and reads somebody else's words with the creator, Stan Lee. Let's not put those two things on the same level. Okay, next question. This one comes to us from Trevor Valentine, who writes, John, what 3 comic book characters would you like to see a road trip movie? You know what? I don't like the questions about what 3, what top 5, what top 10, because those are questions, guys, that I have to sit down and actually think about for a while. So I'm going to skip that one for now. Let's see. Next one here. We'll bring up from Fear the Beard 013 writes, John, would Iron Man 3 have benefited from the current directors in the MCU right now? I didn't think Iron Man 3 was terrible. I kind of dug it. Now, most people that I talk to who don't like Iron Man 3, when I press them on a little bit, the first thing they say is the whole thing they did with the Mandarin. And I get it. You thought you were going to get Mandarin, and you didn't get Mandarin. I get it. When I watched the movie the first time, though, I'm watching, I'm like, oh, that was a great stunt. I mean, that was a great little trick that they pulled on the audience, and I thought it worked. But an awful lot of people were very upset by that. And I understand why. I do. Just because it didn't hit me that way, I totally understand why other people were upset by it. And I think that's colored what they thought. Some people were complaining there wasn't enough Iron Man in Iron Man. It was more Tony Stark. But Tony Stark is Iron Man. So I was totally good with that too. I love the whole angle they did with the PTSD with Tony. I thought that was really innovative that they did that with a comic book movie. So I thought that was great. So I don't know. I don't know if having any other director would have made much of a difference. I thought Shane Black did a pretty good job, and Shane Black's a very good director. I mean, just look at Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Just look at The Nice Guys. The Nice Guys is one of the most underappreciated movies of the past 4 or 5 years. Shane Black's a good director. So I thought they did an okay job with it. But I totally understand. It is one of the weaker MCU films, and I totally understand why people didn't like it. That's totally cool. I just don't think changing directors would have made much of a difference. Let's see. This one comes to us from Jador Gu, who writes, when are you spreading your review net to cover more international movies? Well, here's the problem with that. The problem with me reviewing a lot of international movies is it's a time, for me to do a review is a time commitment. Number one, I've got to have the time to watch the movie. Number two, I got to travel to wherever they're showing the movie if it's not available for viewing at home. Then I actually got to plan out my review, record the review, edit the review, render it, upload it. So it's a bit of a time commitment, okay? We're talking 5-6 hours. The problem is I could put that up, but nobody's going to watch it. I mean, that's a struggle I've come across quite often, is that sometimes I see these smaller, like indie films or some international films that I really like, but I can't do a review of them because I could put it up, but no one's going to watch it. Like, nobody is at all concerned. What's that one I saw? Well, I'll just make one up, but Malcolm and His Bicycle, this great little indie film, right? And I watch it and I love it, but it's not going to be playing in theaters wide. So even if I reviewed it, people wouldn't have a chance to see it. So, and they're not interested in the movie. People don't watch reviews. This is one of the things I've learned from doing this stuff for many years. People generally, there are exceptions, but generally speaking, people don't watch reviews of movies they themselves are not interested in. So there's not really a point in me doing reviews for those movies. But unless I come across a movie that I really love and I want to champion and I want to get behind and all that kind of stuff, but it would have to be a movie that completely blows my socks off. It can't just be a movie that I thought was really good. It would have to be one that I'd be willing to invest all that time and energy to try to get behind it and champion it and try to get more people to watch it. Other than that, it's an uphill battle for me to try to do reviews like that. Same with a lot of TV shows. Like a lot of people say, hey, why don't you do reviews of this little TV show that nobody watches? Because nobody watches it. And if I do a review of it, no one's going to watch the review. So I should probably spend my time doing other things that people are interested in or will watch. But it's a balancing act, man. It's a balancing act. You got to find the right balance between, doing stuff like that and doing stuff that more people are interested in. And you're right. I should try to find that balance. Okay, let's see here. Next one comes from Matt Yamasaki, of course. John, do you think that Bruce will die in Justice League, paving the way for a new Batman? No, I don't. I believe ultimately they will just recast Batman. I don't think they're going to kill him off. I don't know that for a fact. They may kill him off. That's fine. But Bruce Wayne is Batman. Now, I've said before, it's totally possible they may kill him off. And then in comes Armie Hammer as Richard Grayson, taking up the mantle of his mentor, and he becomes Batman. That's possible. Sure, that's possible. But I still think the smart money is on recast. And remember, Ben Affleck could be in another movie after Justice League. He is under contract for another one. I've always said from the beginning, there's a solid 50% chance that he's in another movie, at least one more, after Justice League, because he is contracted for at least one more. So whether they decide to do that and use him in a Justice League 2 or in the first standalone Batman movie or not at all, we'll have to wait and see. But I do think ultimately, whatever they do, they're going to recast. I don't think they're going to kill him off, but who knows? They might kill him off. We'll just have to wait and see. Okay, let's try another one here. This one, remember, I'm not reading these first guys. Miles Pellis writes, John, do you think that Joss Whedon will abandon the Night Owl ripoff Batman costume in Justice League? Okay, first of all, you do know, right, that the Night Owl design, they admitted this. The Night Owl design is ripped off of Batman. Like, you know that, right? You do know that the Night Owl design and costume was a ripoff of Batman. So the fact that Batman, one of the new outfits, one of the tactical outfits, has some similarities to Night Owl does not... If Night Owl is a ripoff of Batman in the first place, then one of the Batman tactical outfits having some resemblance to the Night Owl costume is not a ripoff of Night Owl. You cannot rip off somebody who already ripped you off. All right? You cannot rip somebody off who already ripped you off. You can't do it. Like if you steal $5 out of my pocket and then I go into your pocket and steal that back, I didn't steal $5 from you. That was my $5. Batman did not steal the look from Night Owl. Night Owl already stole the look from Batman. So, no, I still think we're going to get that tactical battle suit. I still think that suit's going to be in there, and it is not a ripoff of Night Owl because Night Owl got his look from Batman in the first place. So there, anyway, that's my thought of it. Let's see. Next question. This one is Trevor, another one from Trevor Valentine, who writes, John, are you watching Orville? I am, and it's getting interesting. I have watched all 4 episodes of Orville. I still don't think it's great, but they have done a couple of interesting things. What has become clear, though, is that we were just talking about ripoffs. This show almost isn't even trying to be a comedy. They put in some funny lines. This is just straight up Seth MacFarlane, and I love Seth MacFarlane. I love him. I thought he was a great Oscar host. I love his television work. I love Seth MacFarlane. But this entire show is just Seth MacFarlane desperately wanting to do his own Star Trek show, but they wouldn't let him do a Star Trek show. Because everything about this show is a complete ripoff of Star Trek. And there's not enough satire, there's not enough comedy in it to be considered a satire. And have they had a couple of interesting episodes? Yes, like the episode about this race of people. Whenever somebody's born female, they do a sex change operation on it to make it male. And there's a moral question. That's a very Star Trek thing to do. That was interesting. Coming across a ship that is floating in space with a civilization living inside of it who aren't aware that they're on a spaceship. That's it. That's a very Star Trek thing to do. And like I said, there are a few laughs here and there. Some good laughs too. I'm not saying cheap, some good laughs, but not nearly enough that you can call it a spoof comedy. This show is just a plain old straight up bold-face stealing. It's a straight up ripoff of Star Trek. And I don't believe, honestly, and I'm a big supporter of fair use, but I do not believe that Orville meets the criteria for fair use of parody. There's not enough parody. It's just ripoff. It is really a straight up ripoff. Now that, again, you're right. The show is a little bit interesting. I didn't like the first episode at all, but I have liked the other ones a little bit better each time. So I'm not commenting on the quality of the show, but let's call it what it is. This isn't parody. This isn't a spoof. This is a straight up ripoff of Star Trek that throws in a couple of jokes to hide behind saying it's parody so we can rip it off. I don't think it meets the criterion. Honestly, I think if Paramount decided to go after Fox for the Orville, I think they'd win. I think Paramount would win if they decided they wanted to do that, because I do not believe it meets the criteria for fair use. I believe it is just a straight up vandalism. It's straight up a ripoff. Even though I think it's getting better, it's a ripoff of a show. All right, guys, that will do it for me for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for joining me. Listen, while you're here, why don't you take a second, click on that subscribe button, become a subscriber to my YouTube channel. If you like these videos, share them around on your Facebook, on your Twitter. Make sure you're following me, speaking of Facebook and Twitter, on Facebook and Twitter, simply at John Campea. That will do it for me, guys. Thank you much for joining me. My name's John Campea, and until next time, bye-bye.